Well, hello. I'm gonna do a little heart, and I did a poll earlier today where I was asking people um, what reasons they started with DMDave, and a bunch of people said they weren't interested in learning about writing adventures and stuff like that. So I was gonna work on some stuff today, anyways. Uh, so here we are. I hope this is working right. I don't know. I feel like a boomer. Is it working? Is the Facebook's working? Um, so if you are in my Saturday group, there's going to be some spoilers. So you might want to exit if you're in my Saturday group. Otherwise, I've done things a little bit differently today. I went yesterday. I took a Tim Hart map. I own a 5-part map that I've been looking to do something with for a while, and I put it into Roll20. I've already done a lot of the legwork for it, but you can see that it's here. It's sized right. I went ahead and numbered everything. I want the entrances to come, or the characters to come out of this area here. So I started with numbering that. So usually when I write an adventure, I usually start with a map. It kind of inspires me and gives me an idea. Even if I don't know what I want to put in it first, I'll look at a map like this, which is a pretty cool map, and it's like a 5-part series that I'm going to probably write and publish in either Broadsword 8 or 9, and then do in pieces. And I'm actually going to run it with my normal group on Saturday. So again, if you're watching this, guys, go away. There's spoilers. Um, let's see. So, anyways, yeah, I put it in a Roll20. If you haven't used Roll20 before, it's pretty cool. Once you start up a new page, you go into um, page toolbar. You enter a page. You size the map right. Make sure that the map is on your background layer, which this one already is. I already went in and did all the dynamic lighting for it, which honestly, I could just sit around and do dynamic lighting all day. It's a lot of fun. And you'll see here, I'm doing it kind of the typical way of doing it, where the walls I've outlined in blue, and then I did removable doors in orange, and also some other, like this is a little curtain here. And once I've got the dynamic lighting done, and if you haven't done dynamic lighting before, the easiest way I find to do it is with straight edges, draw boxes, because it'll automatically draw a box and it won't or automatically draws like straight, lines at 180 or 90 degrees. But it won't like like if you just did it like with the polygon tool or the hand drawing tool, sometimes they get kind of like crooked. Like you can see this one I did with the polygon tool, and it's a little bit off, like it's a few degrees off. But these give you nice straight lines, make your life a little bit easier, and then you can move them around using your tool. And if you hold the option key, it'll let you like place it anywhere you want. Instead of, like, if I didn't use the option key, it would snap to grids, which can be not the best. But anyways, yeah, you can see I put the dynamic lighting in. And to test dynamic lighting, I'll get a token. Like I've taken this drow guy here, and I've given him a quote torch to set up his dynamic lighting. I just used the old school one, and I gave him 40/20 dynamic lighting, and he can see light. Normally, I don't start writing adventures using Roll20, but I kind of wanted to do it backwards this time because I was in a need. My main party group, the guys I've been running adventures for 2 years, just finished up Forge of Fury, so I needed something new, and I didn't want to do the next adventure in the Tales of the Yawning Portal series, which is Tamachoan, because Joe, one of my players, he just read it. It's a cool adventure. Otherwise, I would have done it. But that was the only 5th level adventure that I had. And it may seem weird that, yeah, I write like 3 adventures a week, but I almost never run my own content because I'll run other adventures to kind of learn, especially Wizards of the Coast stuff, to learn how they build stuff and get the flow. Because I mean, they've got thousands of hours of playtesting in every module that they do. And like Yawning Portal, for example, I mean, that a lot of those adventures have been around for 30 plus years, so they're super duper refined. Um, But in this case, I did things a little backwards. I wanted to start with roll 20 because I had a need for it because this Saturday I'm going to have to run this. So instead of like normally when I would write an adventure, post it on Patreon, and then like this, I'm actually creating it on roll 20 first, so a little bit different. Anyways, with the dynamic lighting, if you're in roll 20 and you set up dynamic lighting and you go to your token layer, if you hit Control L, you can see what the player, in this case, like a drow would see, and I can see that everything is good. I'm looking for like make sure that it's you can understand it, so you can see Tim on his maps have this nice little like grainy layer, so you can tell it's like a wall. I put a little paper texture in the background so it's not so like white and just like stark white. You'll also notice that the columns I do as X's, and the reason for that is because if you do them as like a circle, it might block passage around it. But in this case, you can totally walk around a column without being blocked by it. Otherwise, if I had done like a circle, I'd be like, ooh, I can't move into that space when you've got restricted movement on. So it's kind of nice. So you can still hide. So I could be like here, and if there was a character like standing right here, they wouldn't be able to see me, which is pretty nifty and fun to kind of play with when you're doing this stuff. And you can see I've got, like, I already went around and tested, so I know it's pretty clear. But like if there were like cracks, I'd be able to find it. It also helps to know, like if you're doing restricted movement, like to make sure that they can fit through certain areas that you want them to fit through, because sometimes drawing into a square will prevent movement into that square. So like an example, like in this map in particular, there's a lot of like little narrow passages which like I can't get any further in, right? Like I'm trying to move and he's like stuck. So, which is not bad. It's kind of cool. Like it'd be kind of cool if like, oh, there's a battle. I got to run away. Oh no, it's too thin. Help! You know, like I can't get through here. So kind of a cool dynamic. I would have edited if I wanted them to go through there, but I thought it was like cooler to be like super deadly. You know, like this little narrow passage they just can't seem to fit into. I think it was more fun. And I personally, I think on VTT running the dynamic lighting, the old school dynamic lighting, really makes for a fun game. And one thing I do is to go with raw. So this was just a drow guy. I'd give him 120 feet of light, 0 feet as when dim light would start, because remember, dark vision turns darkness into dim light, so they shouldn't be able to see in bright light. And it's a mechanical thing because one, like remember in the rules, all dim light is obscured, and lightly obscured, and while you're in a lightly obscured area, you have a -5 to passive perception. So this is really big when you're dealing with people who have high stealth checks, or not even that high stealth checks, just stealth in the dark, because you can hide a lot of things because effectively you're getting like a +5 bonus to your stealth checks. So if you have things like I like to use like giant spiders, which have a +7 to their stealth checks, they effectively have a +12 to their stealth check when they're in dim light, and they're always going to be in dim light because I mean they have blind sight. So these are kind of things you want to think about. So like really, when you have a character who's got 120 feet of dark vision, it's going to look more like this. It's going to be like really creepy and dark. There's nothing you can do to get rid of that halo in Roll20, unfortunately, but still, it's a really nifty effect to have, you know, this dark vision. And drow have 120 feet of dark vision, but your average character is gonna have 60 feet, which makes it like super creepy. So if he was just like a like a stock elf. Sorry if I'm rambling. I like to like kind of lead people the way I'm thinking. You could see like, oh, it's super creepy over here. But if you set it up with bright, like if it was like just bright on bright, then it wouldn't be nearly as fun. Like it's like, oh well, I'm in the giant spotlight now. But because it's all dark and eerie with the 0%, it really gives you that dungeon feel. I don't know if I'm reading some of what folks say. Oh, set dim starts at -10. Huh. Let me try that. Oh, cool. Good tip. Thanks. All right, that's even better. Oh, I'm in the dark. So scary. Ah. So yeah, the one thing I really like with Roll20 and the VTT conversions is that you can really do some nifty stuff and play with the darkness, and it's really fun to like when you have somebody who's watching and say, like I do this all the time in my game, and I won't even say anything. Like I'll play, I'll look in what people's vision are, especially like the people who have the biggest ranges of vision, and I'll stick something uh, like a giant spider. Oh, for the love of what? Why are you not coming out as a token, you ding? Oh, there we go. Okay. So I'll take like something like the giant spider and stick it so it's just barely coming out, and then I'll move it just to like, what the, what was that? You know, and it makes like a really cool effect. And I won't say anything. I'll just be quiet and be like, what was that? Oh my lord, you know, which makes for kind of a fun game. We had a game the other night where, if you guys didn't know, with the legendary patrons, the people who are the platinum level on my Patreon, if they like we run a Mad Mage game like literally every night, and one of they were all running from like this horde of were rats, and the wizard runs into a room, and then they're like out of the corner of his eye, he could see a token. He's like, "What the hell?" And it turns out to be this mage who they like mugged 3 days ago. So it was kind of funny to like have like this one danger that they're getting away from that's very obvious, and then they run face first into like basically a callback NBC, and it was a really hoot, and it's fun to do stuff like that, and really like when you're doing theater of mind or traditional tabletop, it's um damn it, Joe, there's spoilers here. Yeah, of course Joe shows up, him and his damn horse. Um, yeah, like it's really fun to play with this. Okay, so going back to adventure making, I put the map in, all the dynamic lighting. I've numbered it. When I do numbering, I start with the entrance first, so I plan on them entering through here. And yeah, hey, just a note again, if you're one of my players, stop watching, Joe. um, if they're going to enter through here, any kind of like side passages I'll do right away. So I made this B, and I do kind of like I like the way the Dungeons of the Mad Mage does it, where they um, when they number, they do numerically. They'll do a section as one, and that's Tim Harton maps too. Tim Harton's really cool. Paratimedesign.ca. I buy a lot of his maps. Super cool guy. We got a great licensing deal. It's kind of cool because he's official WotC guy. Um, his maps are black and white, so you got to be like me, like an old fart who likes that stuff. But you can see here, I threw in like a basic tan. Let me see if I got it on the. Uh, yeah, you can see I've taken just like some paper parchment, put it underneath, and if you're a Photoshop person, you'll know how to do this. And you can see I've just adjusted the white layer so it shines through. I've taken out the grids on this because I buy the PSDs direct from him, so I can take all this stuff, get rid of all the secret doors, get rid of the grid and all that stuff, because his grid's always going to be 10 by 10 instead of 5 by 5, which is kind of a typical D&D size. But where was I? Okay, yeah, and you can see it's sized right here. His older maps have a little funky sizing, but I've calculated if you increase the width by 108.5% and the height by 104.5 and trim off the sides so it conforms to your control H grid in Photoshop, it should fit perfectly. And we had a talk, and he's restructuring all his maps. So, like I said, a really cool guy. Definitely one of my favorite cartographers because I love huge, chunky dungeon maps with lots of rooms and lots of place to explore. I'm a big advocate for exploration in D&D. I think combat has like really started to outshine what D&D really is, and D&D in my mind's more exploration. You know, it should be three pillars, not like one big strong pillar and two tiny pillars. You know, the strong pillar being combat, and the other two being role playing and uh, um, RP role playing and exploration. So I like a lot of exploration, so I use his big maps. But anyways, numbering. So the way that Mad Mage does it is it takes kind of like areas or sections. So say if you had like a goblin lair in here, usually a big dungeon, you know, you're going to have multiple ecologies unless it's like they have a really good job of controlling it. Because a dungeon is usually going to be like, it's almost always never, it's almost always some sort of ruins that um, used to be used for something else. You know, it was built as a dwarven stronghold. Like that's what Mad Mage is, right? It used to be a dwarven stronghold. For the most part, there's some other random stuff, but that's like the big first five layers are all dwarven stuff. Or it's you know, it's like a temple, or it had some old use. Usually, the original creators are long gone, and other people have moved in. And when you have like massive ones, you'll have like multiple factions within. So in Mad Mage, for example, like the first layer, and this is spoilers if you haven't read Mad Mage, but like the first layer has like the Undertaker's Xanathar's Guild. It's got some stuff that Hallister, the guy who like rules the dungeon now, has tossed into there. It's got Grells, it's got Grix, you know, like all these different ecologies. Typically in Mad Mage, he's grouping the sections of the dungeon by like these different ecologies. So if you have like a goblin layer, for example, it'll be like you'll have your headline will be like goblin layer, and then like the different rooms connected to that goblin layer. So like in the second level of Mad Mage, there's like 9 different places that the goblins have taken over, who have like the little marketplace, and they've got like a little throne room and all this stuff. So I did kind of the same with numbering on this. I don't even know what I'm going to put in here yet, but I thought it made sense to like make all these cool little underwater caves that act as a back door for this dungeon. And you can see I've numbered them 1A, 1B, pretty much all the way through 1M. And I'm probably just going to have that be like its own little ecology and section. Like this is sort of like the back door to this dungeon. And what's cool about this is you can't see it from the maps here, but there's five parts to this mofo, which interestingly moves through in an L shape. Like these two water passages connect to another part of the map, and the then that goes upstairs to like this huge fortress. It's really cool. So so I did that, and I number clockwise to go with the follow the left wall rule. So B I did just because it's its own kind of like little niche, but then it was like C D E F G H I J K L all the way to M, and then I started back at the bottom from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Did I forget 10? Of course I did. 8, 9, 11. And I got 12, so I'll have to renumber these. Yeah, that's a pain with numbering is like you get one off, you got to go back and go through them all. You're like, oh, Lord. But numbering's pretty easy. Instead of making tokens for it, I just straight up went to the GM info layer and just added them all in like that. So this should have been 10. All right, so that'll be 10. This needs to be 13 now. Whoops. So yeah, just type it in, hit it, that. It's in the GM layer, which means players can't see it. So you can, like, it's only kept to you. Same with these secret doors. I just typed an S. I didn't make it any more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, even if I were to package this module up and sell it, which will likely happen, um, I won't, like, I think this is clear enough that it, you know, it's getting the information through. I mean, there's no need to like go crazy on stuff sometimes. I think, in my opinion, information architecture is way more important in dungeon design, especially if you're going to try to sell stuff, than necessarily making it like super pretty. Like this is pretty clear. Tim's maps, you know these are caves. You know this is like some sort of like temple or something. It's kind of an old school way of thinking. I know, like, everybody's really into color maps and everything. 14, 15, 16. Actually, this one should be 16 because likely it'll be found first. 16, which means I can keep that as 17. How convenient. Um, but like being able to get across the information in the fastest way possible so that people can use it effectively when they're running these, not just like sitting and reading and try to memorize. Because like back in the day when you got an old module, like this was before like the time of like if you go back to like, let me think. I was just running Desert of Desolation a while ago, which is a first edition adventure, and the thing is just horribly organized and just riddled with typos. But it was like the first Weiss or first Hickman, the Hickmans who did probably most well known, I think, for writing Dragonlance. I think that was them, Weiss and Hickman, yeah. And then Ravenloft is probably like their most famous module. But the it was just huge blocks of text, right? So if you try to read that with people who are so used to modern information architecture, which involves headline hierarchies and bullet points and like kind of things that you get used to with reading a blog that makes you able to get what you need out of the information faster, like that didn't really exist. So that's the key now to writing a pretty good module. And like I'm always like I'm not perfect at it, but I'm always trying to like improve the way I do it. Running Mad Mage has really helped me kind of understand information architecture a little bit better to improve my ability as a writer. Which, if you're going to be like a writer or a pro in anything, you should always try to get as much feedback as you can, good and bad, mostly bad, honestly. And I mean, good feedback's good too. Good feedback is like a canary in a cave telling you, okay, that obviously I should keep doing this. But bad feedback can tell you, like, especially if it's the same thing over and over again, like how you can improve and how you can do stuff. So, like, for example, I took out descriptive blocks for a while, and I got a lot of feedback saying people really liked them. I don't use them, like, personally. I don't need to use them, and Dungeon of the Mad Mage doesn't have any descriptive blocks, so you kind of have to be careful when you're if you haven't if you haven't done any prep for it. You need to be able to know, like, spot ahead. But I think it's what really well laid out because it did a good job of like making bullet points of what the character should know and then text blocks for what the DM should know, so you can kind of digest the information. It's not perfect. It probably could have used another draft or two, I think, at Wizards. So if Wizards, you're listening, awesome book, but yeah, it could have been on the fryer a little bit longer. could have baked for a bit more. But anyways, that's how I've done it. I've created the dungeon, filled in all the areas, and at this point, it comes down to figuring out like sorry, reading through, figuring out how to stock this puppy because we got a lot going on here. I haven't really planned anything out. I picked out a name Xandrakar because I thought that's really sounded cool. And my original idea was this is going to be like the back door to a fortress that's really hard to get into. Because I'll kind of show you what the whole thing looks like to give you a broader picture of what I'm looking at. So if you go to Tim Harton's website, it's on paratimedesign.ca. Lots of really cool free maps, and he sells like the expanded versions on Roll20 for like dirt cheap. I think like $1 or $2 for the whole set. Here's the whole dungeon series right here. This is the one that I'm working on today, this April 10th map. You can see it connects to the third. Then it goes into the bottom layer of the fortress here. So yeah, let's see. Oop. Yeah, see, the staircase leads up to the top fortress there. And then this is the top fortress, and it's got 3 layers with like this really cool like balcony system in the front here. Lots of staircases, so a whole lot of really cool things. And I thought it would be really cool to like. I think this is the first level. Yeah, this is the first level. So you can see it's got the tree line and all this kind of stuff. Like I thought it'd be really rad. Either like this is impossible to find, or they kind of just stumble on it. They don't know that they're actually in the bottom of a fortress, and then they crawl their way in through the back doors, and eventually end up here, go up the stairs, and like you know lots of dungeon crawling, which would be pretty rad. So that's the big view of it. So that's kind of what I want to do. I know I want to have lots of different ecologies. Last night I was talking to folks on in the Legendary Lounge on Discord. So if you're on Discord, I've got a Legendary Lounge, which is like either folks who are at the platinum level or have been patrons for a long time, and or like they help out with certain things like doing typos and running games. Like if you run a game, like for patrons, you automatically get in. The Legendary Lounge is cool because it's the only place that I really like chat. I'm so busy. Like I wish I could be in the other channels, but yeah, I gotta kind of like restrict it. So yeah, we chat with those, and then I run my Mad Mage game for anybody who's in Legendary who wants to play, which is it's been a lot of fun. We do it every night from 9:30 to 11:30, and it's kind of like taking on mind of its own. Plus, I'm running it like everybody starts at like 2 levels lower than the recommended level, and everybody starts at level 3 in a dungeon that starts at 5, and where they're currently at is much higher than 5. But it creates like it makes them think, which I like. You'll see. And sorry if I'm rambling. I know I'm going all over the place, but it all makes sense. I swear. The big thing is, like I really like 5th edition, but man, it's got some training wheels that makes things a little bit easier. And when you're on level parity in a lot of these adventures, you're gonna have a really easy time, and that's fun, and you get experience. But it kind of becomes like very. But the adventures you're always going to remember the ones that are like most harrowing. I mean, not necessarily the ones you got killed in, but I mean, you're going to remember ones that like other people get killed in. But the ones that are more deadly, and there was a high chance that your characters could get killed. Those are going to be the ones you remember. And if you go by the encounter difficulty XP per character chart, and you like live by that, you're always going to have like they're going to be fun fights, but they're not going to be like memorable. You're like, for example, a few nights ago in the dungeon of the Mad Mage, they ran into a town full of drow, and the place is just loaded with them. So they walk in, like flexing, and right, like they get overwhelmed pretty quick because you got all these drow and giant spiders and grimlocks and like quaggoths and all this stuff like attacking them, and they're like, all right, we need to get out of here. Like that's a memorable fight, and it ended up changing like the entire storyline because they ended up ticking off that whole house. So they had to retreat to a deeper level of the dungeon to kind of figure stuff out. But the just before that, they had a fight with the Chimera, which went for like 2 rounds, and it's like I mean that's cool, and it's kind of funny to be like, haha, 2-round Chimera. But in the end, like when it gets to be like months from now, they're gonna remember that way more than they're gonna remember like 2-shotting a Chimera. And I really think that's where D&D shines, is when the players recognize like they're not super powered demigods, and that sometimes there's going to be dangers that they need to think their way through, whether it's through role playing or whether it's through retreating or sneaking past them or something like that. Because I mean, if everything looks like a nail, you're just gonna be a hammer the whole time, and I mean that's not fun. Like it's more fun to like use your mind and get your adrenaline pumping. I mean, maybe that's just me. I mean, maybe there's some people who don't like it. I mean, what the hell do I know? But as a GM, I enjoy bringing out a wide range of emotion. Like that like that chase scene I mentioned. They ran for like a good, you know, it was pretty quick combat. When I do a chase scene too, I don't let people like think too hard about their actions. I'm like, all right, what do you want to do? 5, 4, 3, and mostly it's dashing to get things moving quick. And then throwing out another like a mage who could have easily like leveled them, but he was a drunk, so it ended up being funny. It's like that's a fun like mixture of emotions, you really have to think about it like a movie. What would make this like regular situation even crazier? And I was like, oh, what about that drunk mage they beat up the other day? Like shows up pissed off, and they did some awesome stuff with it. One of them was like, "Those guys stole your spell book," pointing to the were rats, and like he was like, "Son of a bitch, come here!" and started lobbing fireballs at them. So it was uh it was a lot of fun. Let me look at some questions. This is Mark asked who makes these maps. That's Tim Harton from Paratime Design. He is our awesome Paratime.ca is his website. It looks like it's straight up out of like 1995, but he does a really good job, and I really enjoy like chatting with him. He is the uh, um, the guy who did Dungeon of the Mad Mage. He's really talented, old school artist. Makes big maps all the time. He likes big maps too. Okay, so let's stock this dungeon, right? So we know they're coming in through an underwater place, and like I said last night in Legendary, we were talking about what the theme should be, and someone, I think Sergeant said or somebody said I don't really do monstrosities a lot, which is probably true. I do plenty of undead. Undead are pretty easy. They're low hanging fruit. So, what do I have available for monstrosities? So, I have to create within a document called the SRD, which is a standard reference document. So I can use pretty much anything that Wizards of the Coast gives me. I just have to not use certain things. Like, as much as I would like to use a beholder, for example, like I can't use it, like because it's considered their official IP, and I don't have access to it, and it's not in the SRD. So if you go to this website here, 5thsrd.org, it tells you everything that's in the SRD. And this is the most accurate one I've seen. Not all of them are totally accurate. Like I like Donjon too, but Donjon's not totally accurate and up to date. And what's cool is with the monsters, it can give you by CR, name, and type. So for type, if I want to look for monstrosities, like this is the palette I have to paint with. It looks like sphinxes, and kegs, basilisks, behir. A pretty good assortment of stuff. It doesn't have everything. You'll see like Umber Hulks aren't there because they're not SRD. Um, I don't know. I mean, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that's a monstrosity and not in there. But Umber Hulk's probably the biggest one that I'm like, oh, I like Umber Hulks, but I can't use them. But yeah, this is a pretty good list here. So we've got a underwater layer, right? They're going to be coming in here, so we want to use underwater stuff, and it's a natural cavern, so quote unquote underdark, subterranean, whatever you want to call it. Options wise, we've got some stuff we could do, like if we wanted to make it a water themed, like kind of monsters. We've got marrows, which are like, I think they're like the big scary version of merfolk. um, uh, I could do Griggs. I really enjoy using ropers in water because ropers are a lot of fun because ropers are always have false appearance, which pretty much guarantees they're going to get a surprise attack every time. Plus a ridiculous plus 5-inch stealth on top of that, which I don't even know what they really need because they're invisible essentially until they like open up their eye and start, attacking you. They get 4 attacks. They can hang on ceilings. They can't move worth a darn, but I mean, they're 20 armor class. you put them on, and like this is the kind of thing you should think about when building out is like, what is this creature going to do in its natural habitat? So let's say my guys sail in to this area here and they come across a roper. If you don't already have the monster manual, look, I don't work for Wizards, but the token set that you can get for the monster manual is like super duper useful because it'll give you all this stuff. So let's say I want to be a big old jerk and put a roper like right here. So if they're sailing in like on a rowboat, like la 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 la, there's a roper on the ceiling. We'll say this cavern has. So this is important. Roper's not going to put itself in a position where it can't reach stuff, but it's got a 50-foot reach with a +7 to hit. These things are such beasts. Auto grapple, and it can do this 4 times. Like they're just mean, man. Like that CR5. Like get out of here. You're a lot tougher than CR5. So they're basically invisible. They're hard as heck to hit. They get a ton of hit points, so they're tough. They can't move, so they're like it's either gonna kill you or it's not. And then once it gets you in its tendril, grapples you, it can reel you in and then try to bite your head off for freaking 22 damage, man. I mean, that's pretty. That's why you'll see I like to use them a lot because they're just like a mean fu monster. So let's say we gave 30-foot ceilings to this. Roper has a 50-foot range, so I mean, without doing Pythagorean theorem, we'll say that pretty much its area of effect is going to be like anywhere here, right? And this guy's invisible. So you got your heroes floating in on a rowboat. Mofo is invisible. And then, you say something like, and you flow in, and there's a curiously large stalactite on top of the ceiling, and it opens its eye, and it attacks you. Roll initiative, and it'll get a surprise round. Right away, 4 people get grappled, and they're like, ah, and they're floating in the air. This thing can reel them in. It's trying to bite them. People are falling back into the water. They can't reach their friends. It's it turns into suddenly a CR5 monster becomes like super dangerous, and that's all you need for this, right? I mean, like one roper is enough to like make these guys' lives hell. So that's just one idea. I kind of like it. I'm gonna go with that. So we'll put it on the GM layer so it's hidden, and we might even like put it just for since this is my own notes. We might even do its like area of effect, like how much you can attack. Let me see if anybody's yeah interesting to avert that. Oh yeah, that's funny. But yeah, now we got a roper. Oh, let me hide. Why is there a big red box there, Dave? Oh, I don't know. Yeah, now it's on the GM layer. So when they're sailing in, like the roper would position itself in such a way that it's going to get the most. And if it can, it'll just grab fish. So we'll even move it down. Like the most likely path, you got to think like a roper. It wants to eat as much as it can. So you got to think of it like an animal. And let's take a look at its stats because they're super strong. They're not very fast. So everything with them has to be based on, and this is if you want to think real ecology. And if you're not sure, there's an awesome website called the monsters know what they're doing.com. I think it's just the monstersknow.com, which is Keith Amon's website. He gives out of the box tactics for pretty much every monster. And like he focuses a lot on stats. So this is definitely a brute, super strong, super tough, slow, although very stealthy. Not very smart, but not very dumb either. To put this in perspective, a 7 is like that's like ape intelligence, right? So the apes in the game are going to have intelligence of 7 too, so they're pretty smart. Wisdom is 16, which means it has great survival instinct. It's not going to pick a fight that it doesn't think it can win, so it needs to have a pretty good idea of what it should attack. Charisma is 6, but all that means is just like it's slightly animalist, like its self-awareness isn't very high, so it's probably going to be running on autopilot a lot, and they're gross. So charisma has like kind of a weird charisma has always been a weird stat in the game. Like yeah, it's your social stuff, but it's also kind of like your self-awareness and like your projection of yourself, which is why like spells like anything like any conjuration spell that makes you go away, like it's not like a wisdom save. You have to like like your presence has to do it. False appearance, that's its best ability. Anything with false appearance, I don't know how you guys rule it, but it's pretty much invisible until it remains still. And a roper with a 10 feet of movement is not going to move. It's just going to find its sweet spot and just, like try to get all that it can out of it. Like once it's there, it's just going to be like, all right, this is kind of my niche. I'm going to do this until I have a reason to go somewhere else. Like the food source dries up or it becomes too dangerous. Otherwise, because it's going to take me like, I'm going to be plodding along at like 20 feet per round. So they're not fast. They just want to go to a place that's like hacky. And then of course their attacks in the 50-foot range. So we're going to put him in the easiest place for him to do this kind of like tactic and strategy, and like its whole life is going to revolve around just eating. So maybe even like if I really wanted to be like mean, just put him right there. There we go. Look at that. Come on, do my kill. A lot of times in old school modules, they'll telegraph stuff like this a lot. So when there's a major predator in an area, like a roper, you might point out the fact that you enter a large natural cavern with 30-foot high ceilings. The ceilings are pocked with stalagmites, including a large 10-foot one at the center. So this guy's hanging upside down on the ceiling. He's not underwater, just for those who want to know. And you might leave yourself like a token just to remind yourself that it's high up. I don't know what a good one is. And we'll just do that. And you want to do something that's going to do it like a lot of times easy thing to do would be like there's skeletons all around it, like it's barfing up whatever it can't digest. But obviously this is in water, so it'd be a little bit different. So you'd want to telegraph that because yeah, it's really cool and it'll be great to get them, but at the same time you want your players to feel like they're smart, because something like this could easily TPK a party who's relatively new. Like if you had even if they're 5th level characters, if you had a party who wasn't really aware of like their features and what they could do, or even, I mean, I hate to say it, like if they didn't even know what a roper is, like this thing would kill them pretty quick with its tentacles and 22 biting damage, and then having the whole like this, let's say like 10-foot deep water surrounding it. Like that's a dangerous challenge. So you want to make sure that it's pretty obvious, not like super obvious. You don't want to be like, wink, wink, there's a stalactite there that's really big. But at least give a couple clues that there's probably something weird going on with this. So I mean, that's basically it. That's like the first one there. I think that's a pretty cool little like encounter. Kind of like right away it's going to tell you what this place is about, that it's got some kind of creepy monsters in it. We might come back to it later, make some other stuff, but I think that's good enough to establish the theme of at least this section. So yeah, and you'll see like, oh, this is oh my god, oh lord. Our poor drow. So next up we got this over here. Again, this is a little cave, has like a little sandy beach. Little caves, like classically, are always like great little places to like put somebody who hid somewhere and died. So you'll have like a dead adventurer here. Like, oh, dead adventurer. We'll get to my GM layer. You know, dead adventurer who was hiding here for some reason. Maybe he was trying to get away from the roper. Maybe its boat was destroyed and it didn't know how to get out of here. You know, they were too scared to move, and eventually they just die of hunger. You see a lot of that in especially old school designs. Dungeon of the Mad Mage has like 1 out of 10 rooms has like, I'm a dead adventurer who died because I didn't bring enough rations. So you do dead adventurer, not in that big a font. Good grief. Um, and it's okay to have cliches. Like, don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel like every time you create something. You know, that's why I like to do like old school adventures, because dead adventure. Yeah, Dave, your adventures are dead. Oh, rude. Um, Make this a different color too, so it's, oh, for the love of gosh. Boop. This will give us, you know, something interesting in the here. Might even make like a trap or a hazard too. Like maybe this guy pulled into here. I mean, you could do a monster, but like you don't want to go like. I feel like with monsters, unless it's like a fortress or something, you have to be like aware of how the monsters fit in. So you got a roper here who's dominating this area here, which means like he's going to be one of the biggest guys. He's preventing things from moving in and out. There's probably some like fish who just don't know any better who are like, I'm a fish. And the roper's like, haha, well, now I'm going to eat you. And then, you know, the occasional adventurer comes out and he's like, whoa, it's time for a filet mignon. Um, I'm getting tired of all this seafood. But like yeah, we could put another monster in here. But I think it's like a cooler story if like some adventurer years ago was coming down here like, yeah, I found this place, and the roper's like, haha, I got you. He cut his way out of the tendril. He swam to this place, and then he was just stuck. Maybe even the only other thing I might do is put like a hazard or something. But I think it's like kind of a cool reward to be like, first of all, it's going to be kind of hard to see. Like this isn't going to be the most recognizable niche, especially when you've got people with dark vision. Like it's this narrow little path off to the side, and like you know, don't make it crazy. It doesn't have to be like a dragon's horde, you know. But it's a little bit more reward. Like at 5th level, if you ever have question about what sort of treasure to give, you'll like the your best resource is going to be in the DMG on a chapter. Oh gosh, chapter 7. Yeah, specifically like um, the treasure encounter tables, something like this. I mean, easily you can give. Let's see, treasure hoard for 5 to 10, single treasure 5 to 10 is going to be like worth roughly 25 to 100 gold pieces. So that can be like a ring with a gem in it or something. Something like a nice little something to say like, hey, good job for exploring this cave. Maybe even like put up some phony like traps, like not really like a real trap, but say like um like your like make it look like a trap. Sometimes fake traps are just as good. Like have it covered in mold or something. So they're like, oh no, it's covered in mold. What does that mean? And it's really just nothing. It's just like mushrooms or some shit, which could be just as fun to put in fake stuff to, because when you do have like experienced players who are meta as hell, like stuff like that, you'll have them like trying to deal with it for like 20 minutes. What do we do? Do we have a 10-foot pole? No. I'm gonna mage hand. You know, and you could even like you don't always have to like make a surprise something that's gonna kill them. Like last night, like they were searching through this place, and I was like, yeah, there looks like there's something under that washcloth, and he lifts it up, and it's just like a giant cockroach underneath. So like for people who are easily like freaked out by bugs, they're like, oh, and it doesn't do anything. It doesn't attack. It's just gross, right? Like if that was you, and then, yeah, I just watched Goonies. There's that scene where they find Chester Copperpot and they move his skull and like a bug crawls out, and it's like just like a ugh kind of scene, but it really like establishes theme. All right, anyways, so that's that place. We put a dead adventurer in there. We'll give him like a ring with treasure worth 25 gold. If you ever have to do this stuff on the fly, just take your DMG and bookmark like pages 134 through 135, and you'll find that is going to be your best resource for treasure. Also, Xanathar's has some pretty good notes on adventure design expectations. There's like a little sidebar. If you've got Xanathar's Guide to Everything, it's this tiny sidebar that tells you what kind of treasure you should be putting into, like how much treasure people should accumulate. Yeah, page 135. That's kind of convenient. But it tells you in this little sidebar behind the design magic item distribution how much treasure should be found over the course of a campaign. The bulk of treasure comes in the second tier between level 5 and 10. You got 18 rolls on challenge 5 through 10 between those levels. So that's when you're going to get the most treasure. This is a 5th level adventure I'm working on. So definitely use that if you're not sure how much treasure to give and you don't want to like give too much, because if you give too much, like especially magic items, you'll find real quick that the game gets super out of control, because magic items are like basically like cheat codes for a video game, right? Everyone you give them is like gonna make your life hell unless it's like disposable, one shot use thing. But like you throw out something like, God help me, like they all have bags of bags of holding are okay, so nobody wants to calculate encumbrance. But you give someone a +1 longsword in a first level game, suddenly the monsters that have like undead become like not that big a deal. So you just got to be cognizant of what you're given. I'm gonna look at some questions real quick. Oh yeah. Oh, looks like everybody else is just talking among themselves. Okay. Thanks for hanging out with me on this trial run of me doing dungeon building exercises, guys. It's a lot of fun. You never know what people want to get into, and I didn't want to overthink it. I just wanted to jump into it and do it. All right, so let's say they're going down. They start entering these really narrow caverns. We start thinking about like what's in these areas, what it is, and you can see you have these narrow little streams. Might be good for a hazard. Might be good for, I don't know, maybe another monster that's may not necessarily like the roper, but like whatever, like the fish that like if the water is flowing. Let's see. Which way would the water flow? Probably it flows in this way and comes back out in this bottom area here. I think that kind of makes sense. Because if you remember, we looked at that map and we saw that it loops around. So let's say it flows in the roper way. But those who get caught, maybe there's some sort of secondary, what do they call them, like pilot fish or whatever, who's getting the stuff that the roper's not getting. So we'll go back to our monster list and we'll see what we got using our SRD monsters. I think swarm equippers would be cool, like a bunch of angry fish. I don't know much about piranhas, so maybe look at something like that. What else do we have that might be cool? We want to make it about beasts. We got a lot of beasts we could do. It could be an octopus. That'd be cool. Something actually in the water. That might live there. I don't remember if octopi are vegetarians or not. If anybody in the chat knows, maybe. It could be a snake in the water. And don't be afraid to retheme things. Just because things aren't waterborne doesn't mean, like making something waterborne means giving it like a swim speed. It's not a big deal. Like it's a giant octo owl. Shark. Nah, I think a shark would have a bigger space. Maybe spiders would be cool. Hunter shark. Yeah, something. I don't think it would be as tough as the roper. I think the roper would be like the apex predator there, and whatever I'm going to stick in here is going to be a step down from it. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything that's sticking out. So I'll just do a swarm of quippers. I think that's cool. Even if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't matter. It's D&D. So we'll say there's a swarm of quippers in the water. And since nobody's getting through, like, nobody's going to get through on a boat here, right? Ideally, the roper destroys your boat. Really, maybe they should be down here. Now we'll just put them here for now. We'll put a swarm of quippers. Is that what I want to do? Oh, it's tough. Yeah, I guess that makes sense because they're going to catch little fish who swim this way to avoid the roper or get caught in this like little current here. We want to try to get them to get the players though. Like if they can't affect the players, you know, there's no reason for them to exist. Make sure that players can actually even get in through this way. Yeah, so they can get in through this way, but they won't be able to take their boat. Oh, maybe that's what we do. You say that they're it's like, oh man, your raft won't fit. You're gonna have to, but the water is low. It's like 3 feet deep, right? And they get it, and they're like, okay, well, let's check it out. And then there's a swarm of quippers, and quippers are CR1, I think. Pretty sure. Yeah, okay, so they're CR1. All right, so some folks have asked me on Patreon how to balance combat encounters, which is a good question because I'll be honest, like I understand it, but it's just confusing how they have it. Your basic rule of thumb is going to be you've got 4 types of encounter difficulties: easy, medium, hard, and deadly. Easy being something like and what an encounter difficulty means is like you're not necessarily going to die from it. Like even though it's a deadly encounter, that's not what's going to happen. It's an encounter difficulty is the percentage of resources that you're going to use in a day. Now, like it doesn't actually tell you what resource because it's going to be different for everyone, right? So resource for a barbarian is going to be his hit points, right? Especially if he's a tanky barbarian. But resources for a wizard who may not have a lot of hit points are going to be their spells. And that is more or less how the encounter difficulty is. Medium encounters usually means one medium encounter will use about 1/6 to 1/8 of your resources for that day. And the way they translate this in the book is through what they call Adventuring Day XP. So Adventuring Day XP is ideally the number of adjusted XP, so encounter XP. And like I said, this is needlessly complicated, but Adventuring Day XP for one fifth level character, not the whole party, but 1 5th level character is 3,500 experience. So that means that when they fight 350 or 3,500 experience points worth of combat encounters, ideally they should be tapped, whether it's in they've used up all their best spells for the day, or they don't have a lot of hit points remaining. Maybe they're out of short rests, out of key points, you know, whatever resources that they have that they're going to use. So 1/6 of that is going to be basically a medium encounter. So if we look at the encounter difficulty XP per character chart in the DMG, which I think I've got bookmarked, it's page 82, chapter 3. And then right after on the page, turn the page after that, 84 is the Adventuring Day XP. 1/6 of that is going to be right around a medium encounter. And then typically your medium encounters are going to be one monster whose experience or whose CR equals the character's level. So if you have a party of 4 5th level characters and they fight a roper, like that roper should give enough encounter difficulty experience to equal a medium encounter. And if you fight 6 ropers that day in 6 different encounters, that's probably going to use all their resources up. So that's more or less how the math works. Like I said, it's needlessly complicated, but that's kind of the gist of it. Um, it takes a while to kind of learn some of these stuff, and like these days I do a lot of stuff just intuitively. Like I know, like I put the roper there, I'm like, oh, I know they can handle roper, that's a medium encounter. Probably a little bit harder now because it's where it is and it's, it's favored terrain and like set up for success, but still, that's it. Roper is going to be CR1. So if we take our calculator and let's say I've got 5 people coming into this adventure. CR1 is 200 encounter experience. That's 40 experience each. Looking at our encounter XP thresholds by character level on page 82, we can say 50 experience each is nothing, right? For that. That means they're going to take it out pretty quick. What's cool about the Quippers is they got great decks, so they're going to get a +3 to their stealth checks right off the bat. They got a swim speed, so they're going to have advantage in the water. And then it's dim light too, which means effectively they've got a +8 to their stealth checks to get noticed. Blood frenzy, so that means if the roper did any kind of damage and they come in there walking, you're going to have them having advantage on melee attack rolls. So as long as the characters can get, and they've got some other cool stuff too, like because they're a swarm, they have bludgeoning, piercing. So it's not like the most deadly thing in the world, but it ends up working out almost as like a natural trap. So if you wanted to up it a little bit more, maybe you could add in a second swarm. And I think this is cool. Like, there's really no way to get in with the boat here. Whatever's coming in is going to be coming in by foot or swimming through, and they're going to walk right into these quippers here, which, they might surprise them. They're going to be kind of hidden in the water. They're going to attack because they're bloody, and it'll just be a pain. So I think that's kind of cool. So when you have XP, you have 2 different kinds of XP. You have like the XP that they give, and you have encounter XP. And XP that they give is like at the end of it, like you fight 2 swarms of quippers, you take 400 divided by 5 players, everybody gets 80 XP. But that does not mean that they are an encounter that's worth 400 XP. What you have in the book, you'll see on page 82, is your encounter multipliers, because the more monsters that you have in an encounter, the deadlier it becomes, because they have higher action economy and they have more targets in which you need to aim your attacks at. So 2 encounters, for example, against a party of 5 level characters, you have their normal experience, which is going to be 400 combined, right? They're both worth 200, but they get an encounter multiplier of 1.5, which makes them an encounter of 600 experience. The players don't get that experience, but when you're calculating your encounter difficulty and your adventuring day XP, you need to use these multipliers. Otherwise, you could end up in a situation where you're making 2 tough combats and the experience seems okay. It's like, I don't understand, this experience should be right. But it's because the action economy dynamics change and the number of targets that are there change, that it makes it a harder encounter, which is why, like, one roper, like you always hear people like, oh, they single shot at a dragon. Well, it's because a dragon is just one monster. Yeah, they got legendary stuff, but at the end of the day, they're just one target. You're just going to be hitting that. It's not multiple targets like you can have an equally dangerous encounter against like 12 goblins hiding, right? Because they're all over the place. They got bigger chances to hit. It's a tougher combat because by virtue of there being more. The multipliers are designed to go strictly with party size of 3 to 5 adventurers. This means that if you have a bigger party, like a party of 6, or a smaller party, like a party of 2, the multipliers change, and explains how that works on page 83, the DMG. So DMG is your best friend for when designing adventures. If you really want to get into a DM and like do it cool and like do lots of cool tricks, the better you get at the DMG, the better you'll be as a DM in general. It's not just a it's not just a book of magic items wrapped by a bunch of useless pages. It's actually a very, very awesome book, which I think all your pro DMs are like experts at finding what they need in it. All right. So that's how that's going to work. So 600 encounter XP against 5 characters. That's 120. It's still an easy encounter, but I think that's good enough, especially since they're going to be kind of hidden to begin with. So now looking at the ecology of our cave, we can see the roper has done an awesome job of, it's like I'm the lord of this big cave here. We've got the Quippers here eating everything they didn't have. You've got the dead adventurer over there who, managed to get past the roper. This might have even been like some other monster's lair before, but the roper ended up clearing them out. If they can survive to here, we might reward them with something. There may be some treasure. Another thing to do is you might stick in a hazard. Hazard might be cool here, especially if you've got these things like eating up stuff. You might have some sort of like fungus that eats whatever they don't want. So you've got the whole it's the whole circle of life going on in this monster ecology, right? So like the bits and pieces that are flowing, let's see which way is stuff gonna flow. Like this water should probably all be relatively still water. See, it all kinds of ends here. If our water's flowing this way, then all this stuff is probably kind of like it probably is getting slower and slower as it gets to these far ends here, with the fastest waterways being like and going down. So I think some like some lichen or something that grows on the surface here, because you're going to have them walk. I mean, chances are they're going to be walking through this shit too. Still make it kind of low, so it's not like, oh yeah, we're totally cool with walking, but make it like I don't know, some like, unfortunately none of the hazards for the DMG are SRD, which is so annoying. So I can't use like brown mold or any of that shit, which sucks because like I have to sit and I have to think about different kinds of hazards. But fortunately, I've got big creative brain. Someday. So we'll call it blood lichen, con save, or I don't know. It drains 1d4. How about so typically a hazard, what makes a hazard different than a trap is that there's never really a roll for a hazard. It's pretty much if you enter it, it's going to do something to you. Like green slime, for example, like it's gonna, if it falls on you, you take acid damage. There's no like save. And that's the big difference between the two of those. And usually there's something natural, but I think it might be something magical too. So we'll say like it's very obvious that this stuff is growing on the surface of the water. If you enter it, we'll say a creature who starts their turn, or let's do ends, who ends their turn in this area takes, we'll just say straight up 1d4 necrotic damage and must make a DC, we'll be nice, 10 Constitution saving throw, or have their maximum HP reduced by an amount of the amount equal to the necrotic damage taken. So pretty, let's make this a little bit smaller. Pretty simple little trap that I've thrown in here. That I think, I mean, not a trap, a hazard. That we're going to telegraph it a lot because you really want to like make it obvious that there's some sort of something there. I mean, it depends on the dungeon. Like if you're running like a Tomb of Horror style death thing, even in, I mean, you telegraph stuff, but sometimes, people want to walk through the green door. They can walk through the green door. But with this, we'll make it pretty obvious. Maybe even throw some like fish bones or something in there, or exsanguinated creatures, meaning that they've had their blood drained. So anytime they enter this area, there's going to be this weird blood lichen. So pretty gauntlet-y right here. So you've got the roper. If you get past the roper, you got quippers eating it up, and you got blood lichen eating everything else. We've been pretty brutal up to this point. I'd say maybe. Let's see where else to go from here. 1E. This is definitely going to be kind of a pool of stagnant water. You got this cool little niche cave here. And it doesn't really connect to anything else. Like, it's getting further and further away from high traffic areas, so it makes less and less sense that there's going to be monsters, or at least monstrosities. You might have things that are kind of like hiding and don't want to be messed with, but like your apex predators are going to be in areas where they're like this is where I'm going to eat. So one thing you can do is, if you don't know what to do with something, the DMG also has solutions for that. Random tables are your best friend, especially if you want to get to the point of being a DM where you don't have to do a lot of preparation. That the faster you can find the right random table for something, the better you're going to do, because if you can make it like seem like seamless, and especially when you're doing with VTT and people can't like see what you're doing, like the faster you can find a random table that you're looking for and roll on it and immediately toss it in, the cooler you're going to look as a DM. So I, like me, for example, there's some nights where I grab a random map off of like either Tim's website or Dyson Logos or one of the many like cartographer patrons that I follow. And I just like, I do like all this improv. Like I have a rough idea of like how the ecologies work. I mean, it's not like polished or anything, but at the same time, like if you can like throw out these random things and improv it, it's cool. But anyways, in the back of the DMG, and you're going to hear me go back to the DMG like a lot, because DMG is, I think, the most misunderstood book in D&D. Like, you've got on page 292, Appendix A, Random Dungeons, you've got stuff for stocking a dungeon. And I mean, these aren't perfect. They're going to make some weird dungeons. But if you're like stuck on an idea and you don't know what to do, you can use these to kind of give you like an idea of what to stock it with. And for example, page 296, there is a random chamber contents. So if you don't know what to put into your chamber, just randomly roll D100. I got a 74, and this is trap protecting a treasure. Okay, so kind of weird, but at the same time, I mean, who would have gone here, and who, this time, instead of like thinking like what goes with this, like what kind of treasure is there? Okay, well, this seems like a cool place to put a treasure. Who would have put it there? Maybe somebody from the main place who was trying to escape, and they didn't, they were going to come back to it but never did. Like a pirate kind of thing. So we'll say, we've had our adventurers like hump it through this dungeon up to this point. They've gone through roper, they've gone through quippers, they've gone through blood lichen. It's time to reward them. Like, and we want to do a little bit better reward than this, because this is pretty easy to find. This is like, you reward them like, oh, you found this cave and you ignored a skeleton covered in mold. Good job. You get a cookie. But this one's going to be a bit more than a cookie. This is going to be like, hey, thanks for putting up with all the nonsense above. Here's a reward for doing it. So there's going to be like that level of frustration, because it's like, oh, God, a roper on a ceiling. Awful. Quippers in the water. Worse. Blood lichen. Terrible. And then they get to this cave and they find, let's say they find like, like an old rowboat is in here. Like somehow somebody got their rowboat through these narrow tunnels. They're a little bit thicker here, so maybe they like left from this area here. Somebody stole the stuff in the dungeon. They set their rowboat, parked it here, and they needed a trap. And for a trap, again, we can go to page 292 of the DMG and say trap effect table. I rolled chute opens and floor. That didn't really make sense. I'll roll again. It's not really a floor. 83 brittle stairs collapse over spikes. Oh my goodness. Maybe just a spike trap, I guess. Like, rowboat with a trap. Let's see. Rowboat's got a bottom of the boat. Where would I hide it? If I had a rowboat, where would I hide the trap? Man. Oh, maybe like chest like explodes, causing rowboat to sink, taking treasure to bottom of water. I don't know. Maybe we'll come back to this. I can't think of anything crazy right now. But I think that's kind of a cool, like, yeah, there's a rowboat here. Got left behind. Glyphs of warding are usually my go-to. You know what? How about just a stone trap? I think that's pretty simple. Yeah, well, okay. So, treasure. Sorry, rowboat. Ooh, even better. Let's delete this. We'll say trap attached to rowboat drops stone which blocks passage. And anybody caught under must make DC 13 dex save or take 46 bludgeoning and get pinned under water. There you go. So I think that's cool. Can't really read it. Let's change this to yellow. I can't read that either. All right, so there's gonna be a treasure in this rowboat. If you try to grab it, it's like maybe has like a rope that pulls, Goonie style, drops a block right, let's say like right here, and traps you in the cave. And if anybody falls under it, they're pinned, and it's where you live. That's your new house. Enjoy. I think 1E other than that should be empty. In fact, just to make more sense, we'll call that 1E. Now, so this is officially 1E. This is just an empty, cool cavern. Yeah, if you don't have, like, if there's nothing really like about a place that the general features can't explain, so you want to always try to put your general features in. In this case, it would be, the stone or the caverns themselves. They got stone walls. Water is at its deepest point, water is like half of what it is wide. Would be a good way to do quick math. So if you have a 25-foot wide area here, the water should be 12 feet deep, etc., or a fourth, or whatever makes sense for you. And then the general features are going to describe the stone walls and all that good stuff. I think that's pretty straightforward. All right, so that's E. So we're making pretty good progress here. Let's take a look back and see what we've got with our dungeon. You got your roper. You got the hidden treasure guy up there. A couple creeper swarms. We've got our reward for getting through all that. It's still trapped, but we should make it like a really obvious trap. Like it's like a rowboat, and there's like a freaking like it's like tethered to the wall, and there's like a treasure chest like just sitting in the middle of it, like covered in like mildew or something. And if your players at 5th level don't know enough to like search it for traps, make the DC like super easy too, like a DC 10. It's as easy as like a DC 10 investigation check. It's as easy as like tipping it slightly and seeing that there's a rope underneath like that pulls the wall, or they can see like the Rube Goldberg machine that will trigger the trap like built into the wall over here with a perception check. Maybe make the investigation check a little easier than the perception. And then they can disarm it. Pretty simple with like DC 10 dexterity check saving throw. Because this is like I don't want the danger of the trap. The trap is there to make sense because nobody's going to leave like a treasure chest in the middle on a rowboat in the middle of a cavern. But it shouldn't be like the point. Like the thing that made that hard to get to is going to be everything that they had to get through on the way there, which means I would probably put something just as dangerous here to account for the fact that they may not be passing through this section to get it. So this is like the reward for the bullshit that it takes to get down to this layer here. Animated ores. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah, an animated, like if you wanted to do like so there's no animated ores in the game, but what you could easily do is just take something that exists that would work the same way, and flying sword is the first thing that pops in my head, and just retheme it. Just give it bludgeoning damage and drop its AC down or something. Like that's all you really have to do. Like give it like quarterstaff stats, like 1d8 bludgeoning damage, and I mean, really all you have to do is change it to bludgeoning damage. That's probably enough. And 9 times out of 10, like that's the best way to treat monsters. The monster manual has like 350 different monsters in it. Most of the time, just a reskin is all it takes to make them different. And you see that a lot in like WotC went from like 3rd edition and 4th edition where like freaking everything had its own stat block to now like here's 350 stat blocks plus Velos and Mordenkainen's, which honestly are only like only 2/3 of those books are actually stat blocks, and just we'll retheme stuff like an animated ore would be just as easy to make as a flying sword, but doing bludgeoning damage. I'd probably give it less AC too, but yeah, it's a pretty cool idea. Let's see. Where are we in terms of this cavern now? All right, so we're getting closer to the lower layers here. We know we got some kind of temple down here, which we're getting close to, and some other rooms sitting next to it. We haven't really had to figure out the ecology of that place yet. But I think that I want the whole like fortress to be just like mostly creepy crawlers and like weird stuff. I just did a lot of humanoids in my last adventure and kind of like want to do something different. So, all right, so we're now down in 1F. I think here it might just be cool to like instead of like something that's obviously mechanic-y, like have something that's cool for like the people who like mysteries and weird stuff. So maybe have like some weird dungeon dressing in here. Like I'll find you have different kinds of players. You like people like I joke with my wife. She's like, "You never like to go hiking." I was like, "I like hiking. I just don't like when I hike, like my job is to get to the end of the hike. Like, like all the scenery and stuff's cool, but it's more like for me, it's more about like, getting through the trail. And then other people, it's all about stopping and smelling the flowers and all that. And I think in D&D, you're going to have a lot of parties that are a mix of two. So like in my Mad Mage game, I've got like Jock, who is like a guy who's like, come on, let's go shoot some things and and see what's in these room over here. Open the door. Open. He's getting people to open the door. And then you have like Sarge, who plays a character named Aaron, who's like, well, let's investigate this wall because it's got some weird stuff, and maybe we can learn more about this dungeon. And so you want to try to put in things for both those types of players. Otherwise, you might as well just create battle maps and go crazy with it. Um, the I would put, let's see, like strange wall carvings and stuff like this too. Also, it helps build theme a little bit. So if like, why would there be strange wall carvings here? Maybe like the Koatoa or someone like we're using this cavern. I can't use Koatoa because they're again not SRD. Wah, wah. But like it gives hints that of the original inhabitants. It might be something else used. Maybe it was a cavern unto itself. I think that might be kind of cool to do there. Um, this area here is kind of a stagnant. This is like probably the most still water place in the whole place because everything just kind of like stops here. Maybe it has natural springs or something. Might even be kind of gross. So maybe do like stinky water. Um, let's see. We haven't done a monster in a little bit. Maybe I could put in some oozes. Oozes are always good. Gray oozes are a lot of fun in stuff because they have false appearance and they're not very high CR, but I like to use them a lot in water. So we could put this guy here, and you'll see a gray ooze. That's weird. You'll see that the gray ooze has stealth, which is funny, but that doesn't really matter. But the best thing they have is false appearance, indistinguishable from oily pool or wet rock. So you have stagnant water, toss in a gray ooze or two. I think they're pretty low SR or pretty low challenge rating. Yeah, 1/2. So a couple of these is probably all you need. That's not a ooze, is it? Have the water be kind of gross and putrid. These guys are going to be basically invisible. Like monsters or like natural monsters and like things that are thoughtless, they're going to be very much dictated by natural selection. So a lot of them are going to be stealthy and they're going to be good at hiding and they're going to use their environment to their advantage more so than like humanoids who might just be walking around and taking a leak or they're not really cognizant of the surroundings. So it makes sense to like, I know it seems like, oh, you have all these things hiding. Well, it's like, well, I mean, that's how they survive. If they didn't hide or they didn't know how to use their stuff, it'd be different. So interestingly, I think it makes more sense for monsters to be hidden than it does for other stuff because other stuff is going to be like humanoids and intelligent creatures are going to be focusing more like higher up on their hierarchy of needs versus monsters and animals, which they only care about, eating, pooping, and procreating. They're not going to be doing too much in between and sleeping. You might catch up on some sleeping. So, you could have a sleeping bear or something. In fact, that might be kind of cool right here. Like, yeah, that's a great idea. We'll have something that's a little bit easier to see coming. So we'll have a giant crocodile, which CR5 monster, perfect. And these things are huge. And we got it. He's just sleeping here on this shore. Make him very easy to see. So again, that comes in playing with the dynamic lighting is when our adventurers make it to this point. Um, and I mean, these paths are kind of narrow, but I mean, they're probably big enough for him to like go out and do stuff if he really has to. I mean, maybe we could just put regular crocodiles in there. I just like the idea of a big one because you got our hero who's like, la 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 la, oh lord, because a meta player is going to see that big round token. They're not going to be able to read what it is. All they see is like some stuff, and you can describe it's like some sort of reptilian creature, and they're gonna be like, oh god, it's a dragon. But, it's not a dragon. It's a giant crocodile, probably just as mean. And he would be really good in that Ripper Cave too. In fact, like if you wanted to like make a variant on the dungeon, a real simple idea for that would be if this was wider, like this is where he hunts and this is where he hangs out. Um, yeah, I think a giant crocodile would be really good. That's a CR5. It's a medium challenge. He's just sleeping though, so we'll give to remind ourselves that he's sleeping. We'll be like, oh. And he's full from a meal, and we'll just make it so like unless they're like being cocky and like rolling up like right here, it's not going to do anything. And this will also like this will be like more of a win too. I mean, it in itself being that it's an easier monster to fight and conquer, it's gonna they're gonna feel a little bit better after having to deal with all these things that are hiding and like the slog of that, because that could be you can do a few of those and it's exciting, but if you do it too much it gets old. So this like if they could beat this like giant monster pretty quick, then they're gonna feel really good about themselves. They're like, all right, we feel good and recharged, we're ready to go into this dungeon. um so I think that's pretty cool. And yeah, he's huge, but I would say he could probably find his way through some of these passages up here. It's a really cool looking set piece too. Uh, I and J. I really like these areas because they got these cool pillars, and I really want to like do something cool with them. I want to do. I want to do something intelligent. Like I think it makes sense because um, you've got these pools up here that have like great access that go into the temple. I think it's time to like maybe put in some really some smarter creatures. I know I wanted to do monstrosities, but I think it's cool to like break it up because like that might get a little bit old. I'm about 90% sure the Sahuagin are yeah. So we get the basic Sahuagin. It kind of sucks. I want to use the Barons. They're a lot of fun, but like it's okay to use just the regular ones and like theme them up or something. Um, we'll say like maybe they use this area to catch fish, right? So yeah, that makes sense. So check this out. Like the roper's not going to get everything up there, and maybe they're even annoyed by him. Like, oh, he's cutting into our food supply, but stuff's going to still be getting down here, and they've set up nets here. So we're going to put. You see all these variants I have from what's it called? The one with all the boats. I can't think of it now. uh, God, that one adventure module. Salt Marsh. There we go. Yeah, I got like a million different Sahuagin variants. I can't use any of them. I mean, I could use it in my own personal adventures because who cares? But for stuff I'm writing professionally, I have to be cognizant of that. So here we go. We got a couple. Let's say Sahuagin fishermen. They're again CR so I think maybe just two is good. Like they're in the water. They're basically shark people. Is man. Okay, basically shark people. They're in the water. Let's take a look at them so to get a feel for like how they would be acting. Um, yeah, they worship the shark god Sakola. And make sure you read the fluff too. Fluff sometimes fluff will have some cool stuff that's mechanical and give you an idea of how they react. So aquatic elves give them trouble. Shark telepathy. We could say that this is near. In my campaign, they're kind of near like a big sea ocean. So I, I mean, it's kind of weird that they're in regular water, but I mean, they're like one of our best monsters, and I don't use them nearly enough. So, anyways, we'll say that they're in here. They're freshwater Sahuagin. um, I mean, you gotta so take a look at these guys. They're lawful evil. That means they have structure to their society, but it's very tyrannical. So probably means like very despotic, like demagogues lead them. Relatively tough. Swimsuit is obviously a huge advantage because in water they're gonna just like plow through creatures who can't swim. Extremely perceptive and have dark vision 120 feet. Now, what's great about dark vision 120 feet, especially when you're doing VTTs, is the disparity between what they can see and what the characters can see. And this is especially true if they have ranged weapons. So let's put this dude all the way here. And then where's my monster? Where's my guy? Oh no. He got lost. He got eaten by the giant crocodile. All right, let's pretend for a second he's not a drow. And he is up here. And we're going to give him 60 feet of light. Now, check this out. He cannot see our Sahuagin friend. But our Sahuagin friend can definitely see him. So he sees you. What this means is our Sahuagin friend is effectively invisible to him. So he's going to get disadvantaged. So if he's got a weapon that can reach, and we've got 55 feet, and I think homeboys carry just spears. Yeah, so spear has 20, 60 feet. That's not great. I kind of wish they had something else. Well, we'll use drow then. Drow have hand crossbows, which normally have crap range. It's like 30, 120. But because this whole like area beyond their range, actually, that's not too bad. He could throw a spear from there. Because of the disparity, like normally they would have disadvantage with their long, like if they shot with a hand crossbow at 60, 70 feet, but because the thing can't even see it, it's going to cancel it out, and it's kind of a nice little trick to pull when you've got a lot of like people are like, haha, I got dark vision. It's like, well, I got drow, and drow are going to always stay out of range and use ranged weapons and then cast darkness if people get too close. Like you should use like when using drow and things that have like high dark vision, unless they're like Durgar, which might like just rush in and attack. Ideally, like the drow are always going to stick to the shadows, always use their longer range vision, and you may never even see what you're getting hit by, and stuff like that really like makes it a clever D&D game and makes for really interesting, terrifying encounters because it's like, oh god, what's hitting me? And other things to do too to consider is like having light sources that are like, say if we put a light source here, like let's say this guy had a torch. And these are other things you should consider when doing VTT. So let's say he has a torch and all players see light. So he's lighting up the room with a torch. That means I can see him from, even if my vision was 60 feet. I mean, dude's a beacon, like walking right in. Yet dude can't see the Sahuagin. So those are other things to consider too, like especially when you're dealing with like pesky wizards and stuff that have to see the targets in order to like cast a spell on them. Because if there's like a torch right here on the wall, and I've got people hiding in the dark over here. They can see you, but you can't see them. So these are the kind of things you should think about when doing, especially VTT designs. All right, so we've got these Sahuagin here. I think a cool idea is they've got nets set up to capture um, fish that flow into this area. So they don't really, it's not really set up for the characters, but it's, oh, fart, I should have put that on token layer. But it might trip up the characters, and then maybe there's even like a system that they use like to let them know, like a bell or something. They're smart creatures, so don't, they look like, oh, I'm primitive and I got seashells, but keep in mind their average intelligence is 12. This means like the average Sahuagin is way smarter than a human being. So they're not stupid. They understand tactics. They're wise, so they know when to fight. I mean, they're not attractive, but like this kind of works for them because they're ugly and weird and speak their own language, which likely none of your characters are going to like. Players in your campaign are going to speak like who's going to take that? Like unless you're like an aquatic elf or something. Like most people are going to take like goblin and ogre and dwarf and shit. Like they're smart and they're going to know what's up and they're going to have like awesome tactics and they're going to like all these little things I pointed out to you. Like, oh, how would the monster know? Like these guys would know little stuff like that because the average one, you have to think every point of intelligence is not just like marginally smarter. You're like a lot smarter. Like 11 is better than a 10. Like 11 is uh like straight A's in school. A 10 is like B's and C's, but an 11 is like straight A's, and then a 12 is valedictorian, and that's the way it's on a bell curve. So the further you get away from that 10, like 3 is like animal, like 3 or less is like animal intelligence, like but like when you start getting closer to 18, like Einstein, for example, would be a 14 or 15 to give you an idea of that. And anything beyond that means like superhuman level of intelligence because of the way that the numbers work. So it's not just like marginally smarter. So like people who are like, oh, I'm like a 18 intelligence. I'm like, well, no. Like your laptop might be an 18 intelligence, but has like a 1 wisdom because it doesn't know any better. Or like, you know what I mean? It's like all about computing. Um, let's see, just checking for any more questions. But yeah, I mean, a lot of good things. Great passive. They're going to hear you coming. They got great dark vision. They're blood frenzy too, which is cool. The amphibiousness. They got shark telepathy, which that means they're probably going to have some sharks around. So when you have something like this that's built into the fiber of their being, that's telling you this is something that is part of their life and how they should be run. So make sure you have some sharks. It doesn't mean you always have to, like, just because I like dogs doesn't mean I've always got one with me. That's not true. I do always have one with me, but this is going to be pretty big because shark is normally like a intelligence 2 creature, which means it's just going to be like, oh, something to eat, something to eat. They're going to run pretty much on autopilot based on what they do. Like they have very like simple way of thought. But with shark telepathy, you can magically command them, and it doesn't say they have to use an action either. So that's huge. I mean, basically, they're going to in 120 feet, and it says nothing blocks that. Like these are the kind of things you have to look for because this means I could put a shark like 120 feet is huge. Yeah, and I really like. This is the first time I've really built a venture in VTT, but like 120 feet means there could be a shark over here, and this dude could be like, "Yo, pew." It's like, "Hey, Sharky, boo, come help." And then a shark who's got, let's see, like seeing, depending on how fast the shark is, like let's say even like a giant shark. which is basically just jaws. Has a swim speed is 50 to 120 feet. It's going to be like with dash, it'll be there almost immediately. Granted, it won't be able to fit through that cavern, but you could put in something like I think hunter sharks are medium. Um, yeah, swim speed 40 feet, and they are large. Reef shark? Okay, cool. Yeah, reef sharks, little one half creature. We'll say we'll throw in some reef sharks in their like little pool. My computer's running all slow. That's what happens when you live stream and have Discord running and uh you know what? No, let's put him in this natural cave. I think that's cooler. And I think that will be so my thought would be they're lawful evil, which means they don't have any. I mean, they like sharks, but they may not have like any love for them. But they can send a message out saying, "Hey sharks, there's some stuff coming." Like that's 120 feet, perfect. The they can like be like, "All right, we'll let the sharks deal with them, and then we'll go back and get ready for this mess." Um, hmm. All right, so something I just noticed here. We got Big Boy here, who is um, ruling here. There's probably going to be some sort of conflict here. So the Sahuagin, being somewhat smart, may have figured out a way to protect themselves against it. So maybe we could put, I don't know. Huh. I kind of like the Sahuagin, but I also like the big token. Choices, choices. um, might be able to hear Big Boy coming if he's squeezing his way up those passages. Uh, why's he got all these leaves on his head? Uh, his stealth is +5, which means he's probably pretty good at sneaking up on them. And remember, dim light means your stealth is basically +10. So Sahuagin, this would be pretty risky for them to be here if there was that giant alligator there. Oh, I want my giant crocodile though. Huh. Well, you know what? Maybe. Mm, I mean, it doesn't have to make sense, but you kind of want it to. maybe. Maybe that's what we'll do. Maybe the Sahuagin used to operate out of there, but they were eaten by the giant crocodile. That's cool. So their old nets are still there. It's kind of a bummer, but that gives us some like insight into maybe what we make this cavern for. So we'll make this a temple of Sakola. No, that doesn't make. Maybe it does. Yeah, that makes sense because this is detached from the rest of the realm. Hmm. It's okay to go back and change things. You just have to decide what you want to keep and what you don't. All right, so I think I'm gonna take the Sahuagin out, just because, like, I just don't know if it makes sense with what they're doing. Yeah, feed the crocodile. Maybe. I don't know. I like the idea of a fed crocodile. But I like the idea of him being kind of the king, kind of like the Roper is like the guy ruling that area up there. and maybe the signs that there used to be something here. They're amphibious, which means they don't live underwater. So, um, yeah, limited amphibiousness. So, oh no, never mind. It has to stay above water, or basically has to be underwater most of the time. They can be out of water, so it's the other way around. Like, they're not like crocodiles, which are limited amphibiousness, but or they can hold their breath for long periods of time. I really like the nets there. I think that's a cool touch. Or, oh yeah, that's even better. That's it. There we go. That's an idea. So what we can do is the Sahuagin actually are chilling up here. So they don't use those nets to like catch fish now. What they've done is they've put up spikes that protects them from Big Grumpy, but also keeps them fed. Like, and Big Grumpy can't really get anywhere. He can probably get to here, but maybe we'll put similar trap up there too to keep him out. Uh, yeah, I think that's cool. So they've kind of given him free reign of this domain up here. They keep him out of their section of the dungeon by sectioning off here, and they just don't go in this room over here. Maybe there's something over there. We'll come back to it. The Sahuagin are hanging out over here. They've got fish nets in the water here, and then we'll give them their sharks again. But this time the sharks will be in not a giant shark. Let's do reef sharks. They'll be kind of in this pool, and what we'll have is like a real basic temple for them that I think would be kind of cool, or at least they used to work with whatever was here, or they just liked the way it was set up and said, hey, this makes like a good spot for our own place. Like, it's an old temple, they've converted it to their temple of Sokola, and they've managed to establish a symbiotic relationship with the creatures that domesticated crocodile. That's terrifying. They've filled the place with kind of like with their own deets, and now they control pretty much, we'll say, this section of the dungeon that's got this big watery temple. They'd like to get into the bottom, but Big Croc has made things difficult, and they're smart enough to be like, all right, whatever, we'll figure it out later. Maybe we'll kill it one day. For the time being, we're still trying to expand. So we'll probably toss in some more. They don't really have much to worry about from sharks, so that's good. And we'll have a couple of, like, those guys are guards up there. These guys will be guards here. And then this will be maybe where they're storing stuff. They might, so Sahuagin, they might be smart enough to swim under the roper and stay out of its reach. I think that's maybe how they get into the thing, because the roper, well, he can reach or oh, he's 20 feet. That's right, he's 30 feet up. So I need to expand his little love triangle or love box. His box of love. It's crazy reach. Yeah, look at that. Cool. Or they throw at fish or something. Maybe that's the one that they're feeding to keep. So they're using him as a natural guardian. So as you can see, we've evolved, we've made a lot of progress here. We've got Sahuagin who are like acting as guards. We'll probably even these guys could just be in here acting as both fishermen and guards. No need to hide them because they figure like if you've gotten through our first line of defenses, you should be good. They've set up spike traps to keep the crocodile away. Who he might have tested it a couple times, but they've created some pretty like sturdy nets to keep him from getting out, and we'll put those under the water so characters can't see them, because that's all they really need to be. So if a character tries walking through there, they're like, "Ow." All right, so yeah, we'll put a few more guys here into this temple, and this will be where they're storing all their loot. So we'll have like a bunch of like crates and barrels. Of stuff stolen from pillaged ships. All right, so now our little like fortress is out on the coast. So this will be like a coastal cave. I think that's kind of a cool idea. That way it makes sense that there's all these different types of animals living in here. Or I mean, they could be saltwater Sahuagin. It doesn't matter. They're monster fish people. They could be quipper people for all we know. It doesn't matter what they are. You can retheme them to be whatever you need to be, as long as they can communicate with sharks. Ooh, excuse me. Yeah, we should probably have our boss like over here too. And this is a real perfect example of like what could be an easy challenge that could quickly turn really difficult. So Sahuagin is going to be CR2 by him or CR1 by himself, and then you've got 2 in this cave over here, 2 over here, 3 sharks that they can call on, but the sharks are only going to be in the water. 3 more over here, 2 over here. So all in all, like if things get bad, you've got that's 900. There's 7 of them, so that's 2.5 in counter experience, which ends up being about a medium encounter if you've got to fight all of them. So let's maybe even like fill them up a little bit more. We'll make this like totally their burrow where they we've got a bunch of them just like hanging out in the water. So like if the characters aren't careful, this can turn really bad really quick. And the Sahuagin are smart, so they're going to use they're going to know how to disengage. They're going to know when to dodge. They're going to tank. We should probably make a boss level 1 too. What I'll do for my own adventure, I'll stick in stick it in a barren, even though like I won't be able to use them in a published adventure. What the heck? Are they not allowing? Oh, there we go. Even though I can't publish it, I think it's cool enough to have. He's super smart. He's gonna know what to do. He's got shark telepathy. He's got a trident. They're really tough guys, but they're basically just. I mean, they're brutes and they're fast and they're smart. I mean, they've got everything going for them because they're gonna know how to parlay too. Like if things look like it's gonna go bad, they're gonna parlay, and because they are lawful evil, I think they're gonna know when to make a deal and when to, and they're gonna hold to their deals. It might be in their favor, but still. Let's see. Make sure he's lawful. Yeah, they're lawful evil. So he'll be the boss who's kind of running the show, and I'll make something later on. Like if I release this as a like a regular adventure, I'll just make something new. So he and his 3 henchmen are up here in 17D. So all of 17 is pretty much going to be Sahuaginville, along with 1L, which might even be worth renaming to a 17 as well, just so it's all. Yeah, in fact, while I'm thinking about it, I'll just do it now. 17E, I think, is what we are looking for. We'll have to rename 1M to 1L. All right, so now we got our Sahuagin lair. We've got like kind of like a commons area over here, which has just like a bunch of Sahuagin chilling in the pool. They've got their little like shark zone. Maybe even have like another one in the pool with the sharks. Yeah, that makes for like a nice little encounter. Should have some prisoners too. There's always lawful evil prisoners usually go hand in hand, so we can get some. We'll say some. They'll be like water elves that they captured or something. I think might be cool. Would it makes more sense to have them in a cave somewhere? I don't know. I would just have 2 chilling, eating on the shore, eating fish or something. Because I mean, these are guys who are not used to like attacks coming. I mean, they've got guards because they're lawful evil, so they've got structure to their society. But like, they don't like. It's pretty rare that something is gonna happen up in their cave, and they've got access to one eye if they need. So they got multiple ways to go through there. Yeah, I think that's cool. And then have some sort of like alarm system here. Like if anybody's trying to get through there, like they know what's up right away. So yeah, this is basically how I go about creating things. Like, I mean, this isn't too different. Like the difference would be I'd normally write it in a doc, and I wouldn't be having like notes all over the screen like this. But now that I'm writing directly into Roll20, I can put all this stuff in there, and you guys can see what's up. All right, it's about 3 o'clock, and I've been flapping my gums for almost 2 hours. Yeah, I mean, normally if it was just me writing, I'd be going through this a lot quicker. So I'm going a little bit slower. But I mean, we've made some pretty good progress. And they got dark vision. I don't think they'd have any reason to having torches in there. This guy's like making plans with his little lieutenants. Um, we might put these guys even further down. That thing's really running slow because I'm got all this stuff weighing on my processor. um, so that's their zone there. This is where they've kind of claimed, and we can say they've only been here for, oh, I don't know, like maybe just a few weeks, and they really haven't made it any further south, mostly because they got the crocodile problem that they've kind of taken care of. But they're relatively new, so they haven't checked out what's in the rest of this temple area. I don't have any like adventure hooks in mind for what I'm going to do in this adventure, but there are some like cool things that would make secret. Generally, unless you make it easy to find a secret room, you don't want to stick your MacGuffin in there because they might never find it. Like, I really enjoy the Red Brand Fortress in Lost Mines. But I don't think the text does a good job of giving you ways to telegraph that there's that whole secret half section. If you're not familiar with it, it's in Lost Mines at Phandelver, and there's like this big brigand map, which is split into two areas, one side of which you can't find without finding secret doors. And there's some hints that they're there, but there's nothing like your classic like make a perception check and you find wet footprints leading up to the door, or leading up to a section of wall. So as a DM, you kind of have to like learn how to do that. But like with this, like if I wanted to put something here in area 12, like I wouldn't want it to be the linchpin of the adventure. Like you don't want to make it like that hard to find unless it's really freaking obvious that there's a secret door here. But this would probably be the area that I do next. Something really cool in this room. Like I'd want to figure out what the purpose of this is and how it ties to the greater. Now, keep in mind, this is basically could be thought of as like not even part of the rest of this temple. There's a secret door that connects it, but we should probably look at the rest of the map and how it's going to connect to the greater stuff. So when we do the next section, we know exactly. So here's where this goes. So this will flow into here and start at this kind of like landing right here. So it might even have our Sahuagin moved up this far into it. Possibly, we'll see. And then, it goes into the main temple. So I would think that the maybe the shit, where was I? Like thinking about the history of this place and why it's been why this section was further off without a connecting path. Maybe they had some like a water person here. So let's say this was let me think, what's a good villain to have? And if you don't know, like there's random tables for that too. But let's say there's like dragons working together, like a trio of 3 dragons. Or better yet, how about oh, I don't know, something. And this was like the water guys there. This was the oh, you know what? They would be really fun. And I think I mentioned this before, making like an evil Super Friends hideout. Like it's basically like the Justice League of America, but like evil versions, and it used to be their fortress. So this was Aquaman's quote unquote section of it. And it connected down to maybe Batman's bat lair. Yeah, I think that's a funny idea. And then we could have like this will be the Aquaman, like the Sahuagin shoot. The Sahuagin boss, Baron. He's the Aquaman of the dungeon. So, but it used to be like maybe for dragons or something. or I don't know, something clever. So that would help us give us the theme of what all this is, why it connects to this main room, which really seems like the focus of this dungeon is this huge watery area. So definitely some sort of like reason for water. Maybe worshippers of the sea, but I think like yeah, I kind of like the Aquaman idea, evil Aquaman. uh, we've got these areas down here, so maybe I think some kind of like cool library or arcane laboratory right here would be really nifty. Um, for whatever reason, I want to default back to that huge text. So we got arcane labs, and it's water themed, so we want to think about, all right, why would a water themed guy have this secret lair here? What kind of like arcane stuff was he doing? What kind of magic? Maybe even a druid, like a water based druid or a storm sorcerer or something. So, what kind of things would there be in there defending it? When it comes to like magical stuff, your usual go tos are going to be things that have like can be immortal, like won't get bored sitting around for hundreds of years if they have to, and like can be easily controlled by a wizard. Usually, that's going to fall into one of a few different categories, which I'll show you here. Like aberrations, kind of. But celestials would be one. Like if it was a good person, they might stick a diva in to protect it. Constructs are always great because they're gonna, they're just gonna, they don't care. They're just gonna stand there and be like, boop, boop. They don't care that they have to sit there all day. Elementals is another good one. Like you can bind an elemental to a place. They don't age, basically. I mean, they're basically immortal. So any of those would be really good. I think if it was like a storm sorcerer or something who used to work down there, or water sorcerer, even a water elemental might be good. Of course, like there's no water, like there's water here, and we might put a water elemental guardian in here, but there's not really in here. But granted, I mean, you got to get through here to here, so you can consider these two kind of in the. Wait, why is that 11A? It should just be 11, right? Yeah. Um. Oh my gosh, it's running so laggy right now. I got way too much running. It's all these monsters. Um. Back to this. Fae also might do it. Fiends are another one that, I mean, they live for thousands of years. They don't care if they have to sit around for 100 years guarding something, especially if they've had a spell that locked them for that. Giants, humanoids, stuff like that, they're not going to be able to sit around forever. Oozes are okay, but I mean, they're harder to command because they usually have intelligence 1, and they're just going to do their own thing unless they're commanded to. Dungeon of the Mad Mage does a lot of cool things with oozes, typically where they're in stasis. So their work is like a trap. Like you touch something and it turns out it's an ooze. And then undead are another great one to use there. So we've got this arcane lab, some sort of like water lab, maybe like a library slash maybe like chambers of where like somebody like kind of hung out and they had their own little rowboat which would take them deeper or take them back out to sea or deeper into the Underdark or wherever the hell they were going. And yeah, I guess the water would be flowing out this way, right? From the Underdark. Or did I say it was coming the other way? I can't remember. It doesn't matter. Yeah, let's do this. We'll have this secret area here, and we'll put the guardians in here. And I think just like I mean, let's keep it simple. We'll just put like a nice old water elemental, another CR5 monster, um, hidden in the water whenever it shows up. And you can see water elementals. Um, it doesn't say they have false appearance, but I mean, in my thought is like a water elemental hiding in water is going to be pretty hard to see. So leave that up to you in your interpretation. It doesn't say it specifically, but it says water form. So I find it weird that a water elemental wouldn't be nearly invisible while in water itself. And again, it's gonna use the water to its advantage. They're not super smart. They're basically ogres. So it's not going to have good tactics. It's just its job is going to be to beat up like whatever comes near it. Um, they're marginally smarter than a like a dog. uh, got a lot of good resistances. They could swim, water form, and then the whelm power. A lot of good stuff that they can do there, and it grapples stuff. So its job is gonna be to like to pull stuff underwater, which is what you'd want to do. And it works twofold in protecting not just this path into the dungeon, but also making sure that nobody ever finds here. So, being that it's a magical creature, you probably want to give it some sort of like some sort of recognition, like whatever used to live here, it knows not to mess with it. So now we have to think about like, okay, so this water elemental has been here for let's say 100 years. Who lived there before? Because we see we got some statues here too. That's usually what a circle with a star means. It means it's a statue. That's an old school way of doing statues. Um, what creatures used to live here? Um, was it merfolk? Merfolk might be cool. That operated out of this temple along with evil Aquaman. So if you are not a merfolk, it's gonna attack you. I think that's probably a good way to go about it. Um, yeah, or maybe some other like long lost race. So you got your water element. One is fine. You don't need to do two. One's gonna one hidden in water, just like that roper. It's in its perfect environment. They're not as like they're not as clever, or they're brutes. They're just gonna fight. And elementals have no fear of death because when you destroy an elemental or a fiend or any other kind of like what they used to call outsiders, they just go back to their plain existence. So it never has any reason to run away. It's just gonna like fight until it can. And being that it's intelligence 5 and its wisdom is like a 10, it's just gonna like go for whatever it sees as being the most dangerous target. Beat it till it's done. Arcane Labs. Uh, Obviously, you got to get through a tough guy here. You got to find this side of the map, which either you're going to find through the secret door up top, like this secret door here, or you're going to find by going through this back entrance here, or maybe you entered through the Underdark or whatever through this way, and it's not easy to find. Like if I had to guess, like 90% of players will never even find it unless you telegraph it extremely well. So, so what you might do, I mean, just really just rewarding people to get to here is almost enough, and just say, like, make this really obvious that it's there, like a easy perception check. Like, there's no real reason to hide unless you like gave something like really flippin' sweet. So like if we wanted to give like obviously you want to toss in a magic item because that's going to be like kind of like the big reward for finding that. You want to have some kind of cool magic item. Put in some like spell books and scrolls too for the wizards who or they're gonna love. Like it was like an archmage's place. Put in like a spell book with a bunch of weather based spells, and then um, for fifth level characters, you can give away like a rare item. Any kind of like maybe water themed thing to go in there would be really cool. I think maybe even have like the original owner like dead on his bed or something, or as a ghost like still like working forever. A ghost is another good uh, monster that's right around the right challenge rating for this. But for now, we'll leave it like that, and like it's not like super worth stressing about like what's in there right now because, like I said, it's going to be pretty hard to find. Um, let's see, spell book with we'll give with up to fifth level spells, and then good magic item, maybe some magical trident, or that'll be something a wizard could use, unless they were making like this guy was making something for whoever the old Aquaman boss used to be. I think there's Trident of Fish Command. That's uncommon. Um, wow, that's pretty cool. While you carry it, you can use an action, expend one charge to cast Dominate Beast. So I think that's a pretty cool little magic item. Uh, and Trident of Fish Command. So yeah, this guy had that, and he was using it to like work on stuff. Uh, I'm gonna take a break now, but I think I've kind of laid out kind of the process. We still got this big chunk over here. Put all kinds of weird, cool stuff in there. There's water sources and food, so it makes sense that there's still living creatures in there. And at the end of the day, you're going to have lots of little fissures and things like that that aren't always going to necessarily be on the map. So it's not too weird to have like strange monsters wander in and like call places your home. Like this could easily be a lair for some monsters. You got another secret room over here, which is pretty cool. And maybe like make that into a secret study or something. Um, you've got lots of little rooms that used to be something, especially if this was a temple or something. You've got like an auditorium here with a secret door, uh, or like a concealed door. So I didn't show you this. I set this up in. It's pretty nifty. I'll show you how I did this. Yeah. Also, I'm running this on Chrome. Normally, I run my Roll20 games on Firefox. I suggest you do the same because, as you can see on Chrome, it's just like painfully slow. Maybe you guys don't know it as much as me, but I'm just like dying here. Like, oh my gosh, just move. So I've set up this room so it's got the curtain is kind of blacked out. What's cool is, um, oh my gosh, Debbie. Like, if you move here and go like this, you're like, oh, I'm behind the curtain now, and there's a secret door. Well, quote unquote secret. So it pays, like, it pays off for people who take a minute to like actually move their token around. Like you don't even have to make them roll for it. It's just give them like what's behind the curtain, and you can be like, I don't know. Why don't you look behind it? There's a concealed door. Oh, neat. So I thought that was kind of fun. Easy to make. I just made like a dynamic lighting layer, um, like a straight line here, so they can still fit behind it, and like made the little lumps so it still looks like a curtain from that side. But when you're on the other side, it's obvious uh, what it is. But yeah, the rest of these rooms here would just fill out to make sense. So we've moved away from natural caverns to architecture, and architecture is usually going to be structured for convenience and feng shui, if you will. Like we've got this big water-based temple up here. Might have been like baths or something like that. There's a shrine down south, so it definitely has a temple kind of vibe to it. It's separate from the rest of the main fortress, so it had some purpose. I'm thinking like I said, I mean, I think this was like Aquaman's section of the dungeon, and maybe that's what it is. It's like a retired adventurer's spot. They didn't even have to be evil; they could have been like good, but they finally found it. The whole fortress is actually like invisible. That's why it's never been found. There's magic that hides it, so the only way you could get in is through this secret back passage. And we just have to fill out the rest of the rooms here so that they make sense. You have like the wizards area, the water wizards area down south. You've got sorry, my just browser's being so slow right now because of all this stuff I've done to it. Yeah, it does not run this slow on Firefox. It probably doesn't help that I'm streaming too. But we've got the temple. You got like a little antechamber before the temple here, which leads outside. Probably makes sense to have priest chambers or a guard room. Maybe the guard room could even be here, or this is just like the barracks in general, or the where cubicles are for their staff. 2 rooms connected like this always makes sense to do like some sort of kitchen. I think is a really good idea. Because you have like the dining room itself, the kitchen, the eating area. So 5, 6, 7 art is going to be that. 8, maybe some sort of lounge recreation room. Again, if you need ideas, you can always turn to the back to Appendix A or whatever of the DMG, and it'll tell you like what kind of rooms to expect in there. This is like some sort of hall right here connecting everything. This is a learning area. I would say that this should be like seating facing some sort of like teacher here, maybe a desk or something like that. The teacher has a way to get back out into their sort of area. 15 would be a hall with the secret area there. This is all me like thinking through like how I would do it, and then I would go in and then figure out what's happened to it since. But yeah, you just got to look at the flow of things and figure out what makes sense. Okay, so we've got learning area, hallway. This hall connects to an antechamber that connects to the shrine, guard or priest quarters, whichever you feel makes more sense. The temple's workers maybe live in here in their own like little cubicles. Kitchen and dining, something, guard room maybe. I don't know. Another random room here. There's lots of different kinds of random rooms that you can put, like storage areas. Like this might work as storage. Even this maybe even makes sense as a storage area. This looks like it's like would be almost cisterns. So it's unfortunate, like a secret door there. That wouldn't really make sense. But yeah, that's what I'd do. Like that's the flavor of those rooms, but then like what's actually in them depends on like what made sense coming in there and living through it all. And then you want to throw in some like random traps, so I might put like a pit trap somewhere, like maybe put a pit trap like right there. Now granted, Tim usually puts his own pit traps on stuff, so I might just leave them out, but that's about it. I'll probably be working on this a little bit more, and I'll probably log in again tomorrow when I'm working on it. But this is more or less how I build out adventures, and it's pretty fun. Like once you've done it a few times, it gets pretty easy. You just got to roll through it, and yeah, just have it make sense. Always try to be cognizant of like be cognizant of like the characters' levels and what they got to do to go through it, and how to reward them appropriately when they get through certain challenges, and think about like just how everything's connected. But anyways, thanks for listening, everybody. This is a lot of fun, and yeah, we'll see you later.
Grab your sword, prepare your spells. It's time to become a legend of Omeria.